special BizTimes Webcast series, Candid Conversations in Nonprofit Leadership. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dan Meyer, publisher of BizTimes Media. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you for your readership support and for attending this webcast today. At BizTimes Media, we are celebrating our 25th year as an independent and family business, and we're proud to serve you as the only locally owned B2B media company in the region. Like many industries, the nonprofit industry has been greatly disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Fundraising, events, and regular programs have all been affected in various ways. This is the second webcast of a three-part series featuring nonprofit leaders who are navigating through these challenges. We're confident that the ideas and best practices they will share will help you move forward in your organization. Today's program will focus on staying the course during a crisis, and on June 26th, we'll discuss preparing for a new normal. You can sign up for the June 26th program and access the slide deck from today at biztimes.com/NP webcast series. This program is recorded and will also be available later today. I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing their insights with us this morning. For many years, BizTimes Media has been committed to highlighting the nonprofit industry in Southeast Wisconsin and connecting it to our affluent and influential readers. You'll meet our program moderator in a moment, BizTimes Associate Editor Lauren Anderson. I'd like to commend Lauren for the great job she continues to do in covering this important industry. Our every Friday nonprofit e-newsletter features the latest nonprofit news and newsmakers. In each issue of BizTimes Milwaukee, we have two regular nonprofit features. Pay It Forward highlights a local business leader who gives their time, treasure, and talent to the nonprofit community. The alternate issue feature nonprofit news, a nonprofit spotlight, a calendar, and a donation roundup. We're proud of our annual giving guide and thankful for the continued support of many nonprofits and sponsoring companies. Our free nonprofit directory on biztimes.com features hundreds of nonprofits. And lastly, our annual Nonprofit Excellence Awards each fall celebrates for-profit and nonprofit organizations and individuals who have demonstrated excellence in the community. We also shine the spotlight on important issues such as homelessness and housing, which was a featured issue last year. So thanks again for attending today's webcast, and thanks again for our panelists for sharing your insights with us this morning. So now I'd like to turn it over to BizTimes Associate Editor, Nonprofit Education and Healthcare Reporter, and our program moderator, Lauren Anderson. Lauren, take it from here. And you are still muted. There you go.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Just as a reminder, feel free to submit your questions as we're going through the Q&A today via the Q&A function on Zoom. We'll be monitoring those and try to get to as many questions as possible. With that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Joining us today, we have Tim Bach, President and CEO of Pathfinders, Mike Thurtle, President and CEO of Bethesda Lutheran Communities.
Morning.
John Hyatt, President and CEO of Impact, Inc. And Linda, President and CEO of Sharp Literacy. Thank you all for being here today and joining us. I'd like to start with a brief introduction to each of your organizations. Tim, would you kick us off with an intro to Pathfinders?
Absolutely, and good morning, everyone. I really appreciate folks taking the schedules.
Tim, we're having trouble hearing you.
Is this any better?
That's better.
Okay. Again, good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. As Lauren mentioned, I am the President and Chief Executive Officer here at Pathfinders. You see on the screen before you our mission, which is empowering youth and changing lives, as well as our vision statement. And I think given the times we are currently experiencing, I think as an organization, our vision has never been more important as is our mission, because we often find ourselves in positions where we are hoping to give a more meaningful voice for the youth that we serve who are in crisis. And safety as part of our vision and part of our work has also been increasingly important as we continue to adjust and respond to what the pandemic is presenting us as a community and as a society. This is our 50th year of service here in Milwaukee. And in those 50 years, we have talked often about bringing safety, hope, and healing to the young people we're serving, many of which are facing homelessness and other housing instability, sexual abuse, sex exploitation and sex trafficking, other forms of crisis, and across all of those issues and challenges, high levels of interpersonal trauma, intergenerational trauma, community trauma, and societal trauma. And you can see again on the screen a number of reasons for that trauma. Our services are really geared toward meeting the essential needs of the young people and the families that we serve. We have a portfolio of supported housing services where youth are living in the community with intensive support and resources available to them as they move toward greater independence and self-sufficiency. A hallmark of the work that we do is our crisis housing, our emergency shelter for runaway and homeless youth, our youth anti-sexual violence services that includes new past trafficking and exploitation advocacy program, as well as our longstanding hand-in-hand sexual abuse treatment program for children and adolescents. Clinical services, mental health has always been front and center of the work that we do. We are one of the key providers of comprehensive community services for youth and young adults here in Milwaukee in partnership with Milwaukee County Behavioral Health Services. And we do a variety of other clinically based work in very non-traditional and highly effective and innovative ways. And finally, we do education both on a prevention education, harm reduction strategy, utilizing evidence-based approaches and curriculum that effectively meets the needs of reducing risk in a variety of ways for our young people. And then in partnership with the Milwaukee Public Schools, we offer a specialized middle school for 6th through 8th grade students who, because of trauma and significant other mental health challenges, are alternatively placed with our school to address both their academic and their educational and emotional support needs. So that, in a nutshell, is sort of the work that we have been doing in this community over the past 50 years. So I look forward to hearing your questions and sharing more about our response in a moment.
Thanks, Tim. Mike, would you share a bit about Bethesda Lutheran Communities and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Thanks for being here this morning. And it's a pleasure to be here with Tim and John and Linda as well. My name is Mike Thurtle. I'm the CEO of Bethesda. At Bethesda, we bring residential services and innovation to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities across 13 states in the US. We're headquartered in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin. And I like to refer to our organization as a 116-year-old startup because we're trying to really innovate and help people with disabilities across the country. And we were started back in 1904 by a group of German Lutherans in the area. And since then, we've gone across the nation. We focus on total wellness of people. We support them through safe homes and day programs, employment services, training and education, faith supports, and a lot of other things as well. We really look at the care of people in a 360 kind of way. We also have thrift stores in the area to help us with revenue. And you see some of those in the Milwaukee area also. As for me, I came from a consulting background. I started out as a military officer in the Air Force. And right before Bethesda, I worked at the RAND Corporation as a senior consultant there. When I learned about the mission here at Bethesda, I was immediately drawn to it. Just the people we support, the amazing mercy mission that we do, and I really wanted to help. It's truly been an honor and blessing to serve this great cause. As far as our areas of innovation go, as you can see on the screen, there's a picture of a new development we have up in the Minneapolis area. We call it Cornerstone Village, and this is going to be a facility that's integrated with people with disabilities and also senior citizens. And we're going to be incorporating technology throughout this entire village, putting technology to work, smart home technology, remote supports. We're going to be integrating it throughout. We're super excited about this. It's going to be opening up in the August-September timeframe. It's the first one in the nation to have this kind of an integrated approach between senior citizens and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Next slide, our experience with COVID-19. Wow, I know everybody here has been challenged by it. We sure have too. We've got thousands of staff on the front lines who are healthcare workers in these homes. I call them our heroes. And literally, as you see the picture there, one of our parents and guardians actually chalked that on one of the driveways at one of our homes. These guys are amazing. There's a lot going on. We've been operating 24/7 for the last 4 months, and we sheltered really early the first week of March to make sure we protected people. There was a study that just came out literally this last week by NPR that showed that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are 2 to 3 times have higher fatality rates with COVID-19 than people without. So we've been very diligent. There's a lot of comorbidities with this that we've been concerned about. So I just want to say thanks to my team. And Lauren, thank you so much for having us here today. I look forward to participating.
Thanks, Mike. John, can you introduce us to Impact Inc.?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Lauren, taking the time to have us all here. I am John Hyatt. I am the president and CEO at Impact. I have been with the organization for 25 years and in that position as CEO for the last 5. Headquartered in West Dallas, Wisconsin. It is our 60th anniversary. What a way to celebrate 60 years. And we are 70 employees strong. Our mission really is to get people connected to services and resources. We help them solve their immediate crisis, and we get them on a path toward long-term stability. We are the single largest access point in Wisconsin for all things family, health, and social services. So the very broadest scope of everything from food and shelter to mental health and substance abuse, kids with special needs, older adults trying to live independently in the community, and everything imaginable in between. And you can bet that we are regularly in contact and making referrals to Tim and Mike and Linda and all other organizations. And of course, with COVID, we are now all things related to COVID-19, including the latest testing stations and hours of access and all of those kinds of things. We are also 24/7, 365. People access our services by calling, by texting, by chatting, by searching our online resource database. We try to move as many barriers as possible for people to access us. We have people that speak Spanish, and we have a language line for all others. We have a large footprint. If you can go back one, sorry about that, Lauren. A large footprint. We cover all 9 counties in southeastern Wisconsin. Individuals and organizations have come to rely on us. Nearly 300,000 requests for assistance last year alone. And next. We have a number of ways that we provide services to individuals. Our substance abuse services division, comprehensive alcohol and drug screening, as well as mental health and trauma informed connection into resources. And next slide. Through our planning and evaluation division, we work with a lot of nonprofits in the nonprofit sector, providing data-driven feedback designed to improve services and programs. And lastly, the program you're probably most familiar with, the 211 Crisis Call Center, a database of locally of 7,500 different programs, services, and resources, statewide about 25,000. And again, we are the central access point for all of those things I mentioned, including working with folks in that coordinated entry system to emergency shelter and other housing and homeless. And so we're a partner closely with Tim and others in the community to provide that service. And then the last slide, funded through, like a lot of people probably, city and county government, United Way, foundations, program fees, and other individual donations. So that's us. Of course, we are challenged by COVID-19. We've had a dramatic increase in demand on one half of the organization, and then a dramatic decrease in shuttering and with financial complications on the other. So that's one of the challenges. We're glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us and look forward to participating in the conversation.
Thanks, John. Linda, can you introduce us to Sharp Literacy?
Absolutely. Good morning, and thanks to Lauren and Dan for having us on today. The mission of Sharp Literacy is we partner with educators to foster a love of learning and brighten children's futures through our innovative STEAM-based experiential programs. The next slide. Sharp has been around for over 24 years. Sharp, back when it was called Creative Sharp, was founded by Marlene Dorr Kreilkamp, who was a docent at the Milwaukee Art Museum and really saw the connection that urban kids had with arts. So she started it, and it's evolved. While our mission has changed a little bit, certainly the work we do hasn't. Currently for 2019-20 school year, we were in 40 schools. We're K-3 through 5th grade. We are in MPS, choice schools, charter schools, as well as the school district of Waukesha. This year, we served approximately 8,600 kids, with the majority of them being students of color, so 48% Hispanic, 33% African American. Out of all the students that we serve, 88% of them are economically disadvantaged, and that's through the school lunch program. So we are a year-round program. We have programming for the academic year. We also have summer programming, after-school programming, and intergenerational programming. We are funded primarily with corporations and foundations, 60% of our revenue. We also have individuals as well as events. We have been impacted by the COVID, with schools being closed starting on March 16th, actually. So we've actually had to do a 360. We're an in-school program. But we know and knew that these students needed our program. So we were able to react pretty quickly. I have an amazing team that within a span of 3 weeks, we were able to develop a virtual program called Sharp Focus on STEAM, where we're able to deliver online videos as well as a Read With Me program that we were able to deliver to educators as well as our social media sites. So that's a little bit about Sharp. I'm sure you'll hear more in a little bit. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Linda. All right, well, let's dive into the questions here. Just another reminder that you can submit your own questions via the Q&A function on Zoom, and I'll be watching for those. But to start us off, each of you noted that COVID has significantly affected the way that you deliver your services, and in some cases increased the demand for your services. I'd like it if you could talk a little bit more about how you've pivoted, what you've been able to convert into virtual programming, and how that's worked for you. John, if you could start us off here by talking a little bit about the increase in demand for services that you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. In all ways. And the positioning of the crisis call center is such that when things happen in the community, we feel the vibration. So when there is a flu outbreak, when there are every April when the moratorium on utilities ends, when there was the shooting at Miller, our phones start ringing. And so when the stuff started going on with COVID, and then sort of in all sectors, so people want to know more about COVID, and so they call us. And then of course there were the immediate demands. Where do we get food? How do we get our basic needs met? And in a normal day, when we would take 500 calls, all of a sudden we were taking 1,000 calls. And then in the thick of it, we were taking 1,500 calls. And so we had a little experience. Luckily, our third shift, a little bit of our second shift, and some of our weekends were already working remotely from home. So we had to get everybody out of the call center. We had to get everybody working at home. It was obviously no small challenge. We were scrambling for equipment. We were scrambling for training, monitoring, coaching. All of that now all of a sudden happens in a different way. It was we've all said unprecedented, sort of become trite, but unprecedented, and it was a real challenge to get people up. And not only that, to now say, well, in addition to your regular shift, pick up another one We had people literally working around the clock. And in a shift, we had people taking 100 calls. And these are people calling, and they're not calling to say, look, I'm having a great day. They're calling at their worst moment. And so it was, I don't have food, all the regular things, you know, where can I stay? Substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence, all of those calls kept coming in. And so, like I'm sure you'll hear others say, you know, we're all caught up in the pandemic too. So we have our own fears and anxieties and challenges, and then trying to deliver services to people that are equally challenged became difficult.
Would others like to weigh in on that? How have you pivoted your services?
Sure, Lauren. I could just add a little bit to some of what John was saying, because I think much of it is relevant for Pathfinders as well. You know, we benefited as an organization from being always valuing of responsiveness and nimbleness, and our internal ability to respond and react quickly to the changing circumstances. We in early March were already beginning to have those conversations about where were our priorities, what organizationally did we need to beef up, what did we need to step back from a little bit, and we quickly, by the middle of March, implemented our emergency plan. And in that, we identified our core essential services as those being of highest priority, and that we would work to ensure continue to be available. You know, I find myself saying often, as an organization, we never closed, and we have no plans of doing so. There were several areas that, while important in our work and the services that we were providing, they were not deemed essential. And it's there that we really shifted quickly to moving those staff in those key areas, like comprehensive community services in our clinical work, to telehealth or teletherapy modalities, and had those staff work remotely. Our essential services of our emergency shelter for teens, our supported housing for young adults, our drop-in center, which essentially is a day shelter for youth and young adults, our street outreach programming, our trafficking advocacy work, all of those continued. And we made necessary adjustments in terms of increasing the staffing where it was needed, implementing the best recommendations coming out of the Milwaukee Health Department, as well as the State Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Probably one of the biggest challenges in that regard was that we were implementing procedures and protocols that relied on the availability of PPE, personal protective equipment. And this is not unique to our organization, but we were one of many across our community that in the early days really struggled to acquire the necessary supplies and equipment and masks and et cetera that our staff needed. So we have continued those essential services really from the beginning of the pandemic. The other thing that we did was to ensure that we were reducing the risk for those like our direct service staff in essential services and myself, who were continuing to come on site each day. Was we moved remotely all of our admin team, our human resources and finance, as well as our development and communication staff. And we did that intentionally to make sure that we had less staff present on site so we could maximize the number of young people that we could serve, following, as I mentioned, the best safety and health protocols. So that nimbleness and that ability to change course pretty quickly, I think, served our young people well. And we continue to refine that approach as the pandemic continues, and as we get increasingly concerned about the likely impact that will result from the lessening of restrictions in the broader community. That's something we are increasingly trying to continue to adjust and compensate for.
Mike, I know that you mentioned Bethesda moved pretty quickly on this, made a pretty early on decision to lock down your facilities to outside visitors. Can you talk a bit about the decision-making process there, and kind of before anybody else was doing this, you made that call?
Yeah, I was actually on the way back from my honeymoon in mid to late February and talking to my team, and we were looking at the data over in China, East Asia, and then Eastern Europe when Italy started to take more cases on. And we knew it was going to hit. You know, the problem with this problem has been you got some people don't believe it's real, and other people believe it's going to be the huge catastrophe. You know, and so to get the right data, to get the right intel on it was key, because again, the people that we take care of, extremely vulnerable to this. As I said earlier, 2 to 3 times the fatality rates for people with autism and Down syndrome than those who don't have it. So we made a call real early to start to shelter people in place. We have over 350 facilities across the U.S. And what makes it challenging for us is we're in a virtual leadership model. So my executives are spread out across the country, my staff spread out across the country. And so how do we make sure we communicate that effectively and get things going? So we are literally operating what we call the incident command structure in ICS. You might see that in the news today, how the military does things. My vice president of quality, Mina Chang, was the assistant commissioner in New York City, and she'd just come to us about 7 months before, and she and my CEO, Dave Sten, said, we need to stand this up. So we did. And so Lily started to operate a 24/7 structure around what was happening in the homes, what was happening to our staff. As Tim talked about with PPE, again, I think we got ahead of it, but still there was issues. You know, you couldn't get everything you needed in the vast quantities you needed to be able to serve people, but we have. We got our supply chain together. Dave Chaudier, one of my VPs, got ahead of that with our suppliers. And we were shipping things out to all the states to get there. The key to us, though, has been this communication. You can imagine if you got a loved one in one of these homes or facilities and you can't see them. And we've seen these stories on the news, you know, people in hospitals and they can't see their loved ones. So we immediately shipped out technology to our homes to make sure every single home could do Zoom with parents and guardians and families out there, because we knew early on that this social touch was going to be a difficult issue. And we're still dealing with that today. We haven't opened up our homes yet. We're starting to transition, but there's some huge psychological issues along with that too, and people get sheltered in place. But we've been going virtual. Our virtual programming increased too. We started to push more material. Every Friday night, we have a nationwide dance party where we actually hook up all our homes, all 350 of them, and we have people, we have a DJ, and people can socialize. We have bingo on Saturday nights and all kinds of the programming during the week that we push out, faith-based programming, music, cooking classes, all kinds of stuff to be able to give people more of a real experience while they're there. So a lot of challenges. We sheltered early. It paid dividends. It could have been a lot worse than it's been. We're still vigilant, though, because it's not over. And it's a concern we still have. We're still working this every day.
And Linda, obviously schools shut down, as you mentioned, in March. How did your organization respond when that happened?
Sure. We immediately determined that we needed to do something for our students. Again, being a program that provides programming in the classroom. So we developed a program that's been going on now for 10 weeks, sharp focus on STEAM. So we do STEAM focused lessons and activities that are delivered 3 times a week, and that range from fun activities, paper airplane algorithms, skyscraper engineering, to emoji design, and a Read with Me program where we've invited local sports figures, media, community leaders, where they read their favorite book on Fridays. While it's been successful, it's still hard because the majority, we don't know how much technology our students actually have. MPS students are our largest, and up until the end of April, many of them did not have the tools. So while it's a successful program, it's still not touching all the students that we needed to. We're really, really worried about, not only the summer slide, but there's a thing called the COVID slide now, where students are, really are going to feel that, that regression for being not in school for, some of them will be 8 or 9 months. And until, a decision is made on fall, we're happy that we will be providing in-school program this summer. to 8 of our community learning centers. So we're really excited that we'll be able to, provide some programming, but we're still really worried about fall. So in addition to what we did in the summer, we are now planning on developing and creating a learning module system so that if there is not in-school programming next year, it's virtual, we have a platform for our students to and teachers to use on a virtual platform.
Well, clearly the crisis has prompted concerns among nonprofits about revenue and donations. There was a recent Helen Bader Institute study that found that 93% of nonprofits surveyed in Wisconsin are concerned about declining donations. 75% are concerned about the possibility of layoffs. Can you all discuss what the impact has been on revenue for you and donations, and how are you responding to that?
I can talk about that a little bit for us. We actually have had a phenomenal response from all of our partners and from foundations and from donors. While we've reached out to them, we haven't been shy. We were quick to assemble a number of different scenarios, all the way from worst case scenario to best case scenario, and tried to have, what is it that we need to survive? We went through kind of like Tim did, what's essential, what's really critical, and what do we need to maintain? And then went and said, can you help us with this? And had a really terrific response. We also had about a half dozen people, foundations reached out to us and said, how can we help? Along with county government in Milwaukee and Kenosha and Racine. And so so the concern for us is still there's a gap that we're going to have to try and close. The concern is that I think there's a lot of funds being raised and donated, and so we're starting to worry about what does 2021 look like. People still have the means to continue into 2021.
I could just add, as far as SHARP, our fiscal year ends June 30th. And while we really haven't had an impact either way, we have had donors that, especially our corporations, that continue to fund us even at a higher amount than normal. We had one corporation that actually provided us with funding 6 months earlier than their cycle. We are 100% privately funded. So we're going to have a great fiscal year. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021. So we're just staying positive and hoping that when you look at the areas of focus that from the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and Bader and so forth, education, K through 12 education is one of their, focus areas, which, we're pretty happy about.
Lauren, this is Mike. Just to respond, we've actually done 2 COVID campaigns just for fundraising. We've had a pretty good response with that. We've been reaching out to our donors to thank them during this time frame. I've done about 70 town hall meetings with our staff and our families. And through those town halls, people have been more aware of what we're doing and how we're doing things as well. One of my big concerns, though, is that we've actually fallen through the cracks with extra funding. We've been reaching out and reaching out and reaching out. We're too large of a nonprofit to have been subsidized through the initial government stimulus packages that were coming down. So we received 0 external funding from the government during this time frame, yet we're taking care of people on the front lines in a healthcare kind of way. So for our organization, we are in a gap area, and many organizations like ours that had more than 500 employees were in the same spot. And there's additional legislation that's going on right now for extra funding, but it's been difficult. I'll be honest with you, it's been difficult. And through our donors who do donate to us, they've been helpful, extremely helpful. And I just want to say thanks to them for all their help.
Have the rest of the organizations represented here received any federal funding?
Impact has been a part of that PPP program. So fortunate. I mentioned, my initial statements, about 20% of our funding comes through program fees, and the program that generates that was a sharp decline almost to zero. And so, you know, with a $5 million organization, that's $1 million gap that we were trying to fill. The small business loan didn't fill all of that, obviously. So we're, you know, that's our challenge.
Sharp did receive PPP loan as well, which was very helpful, you know, keeping the staff. We knew that once school closed that, you know, we needed everybody on board and to work really, really hard to be creative and innovative on what we could do on a virtual basis. Plus, we were able to pay our educators who are normally in the classroom delivering our program when school closed. So we were able to, you know, make good with them, even though they weren't able to get into the classrooms to do the programming.
Some of you have touched on fundraising during COVID, but we're getting several questions from audience members about creative fundraising strategies that you've employed during COVID. Are there things that you've done that have worked well? And in particular, if what advice would you give for an organization that might have lower brand awareness in the community? What would you recommend they do during this time?
Yeah, it's a challenging question. We've taken advantage of all of the media exposure that we can get, and so we've reached out to media. We were fortunate to be part of a Bader Philanthropies grant, and they worked with a local ad agency, Zizzo. So we had quite a bit of exposure there. We've had friends and connections at both Channel 12 and Channel 4. Made a couple of appearances on the Morning Blend. We are working on a virtual tour of the facility and trying to put together, as Mike had said, a COVID specific campaign. So it's hard.
Lauren, we we had our annual spring fundraiser that was scheduled for April, and that left us very little time to pivot that to a virtual event. But we made the decision early on to not postpone it till the fall because we had early indications that that COVID would be around for some time, and we had early concerns about whether the community would have a second peak or a second wave or you know, ongoing challenges, and I think that is proving to be the case, or likely to be the case. So we had a very successful virtual event, and we are seeing actual increases in support from our individual donors, from the corporate and foundation sector, and some temporary increases in governmental support. You know, our big concern is we're in a strong position financially, and we worked to be in that for the last several years. But as Mike mentioned earlier, how do we sustain support over the long term as other issues require additional support and attention? How do we maintain a level of strength and stability for the long haul? And that, I think, you know, is continuing to be of great concern to many of us, even as we're able to secure temporary support like through the PPP program.
Yeah, the way we're focusing on this one, and being sort of a national nonprofit, there's different kinds of issues. Not to say they're more daunting, but not having a community presence fully in one spot makes it a little bit challenging because people may not be aware of you. We've actually started a program. It goes on every 2 weeks now, where we have a Christian rock band that does a virtual concert for us. In fact, they're all online. We've had them posted out there. And we've had over 5,000 people show up to these virtual concerts. Originally did it for our staff and our people we support, but now it's turned into an awareness kind of an issue. We've had some great bands come out, which has been awesome. But the key to our future in terms of funding is going to be social enterprise. Philanthropy can get us so far. We've got to figure out other methods as well to seek out revenue. And for us, that Cornerstone Village development in Minneapolis, some financial services options we're looking at. We're looking at many, it's a portfolio of fundraising essentially, whether it's a business component or philanthropy. And just like Tim said, this is something we're going to have to look at in the future as well to make sure the sustainability is going to be there.
I'm curious what decisions you all have had to make regarding staffing. Mike, I know that this has presented an opportunity for Bethesda to actually hire some needed positions. maybe a different scenario for others on the panel. Can each of you discuss what the impact has been on staffing for you?
Yeah, what we saw initially, we're looking for silver linings in this whole challenge, and we're always looking for that. I know you guys are too. And one of the silver linings for us was that our vacancy rate for staff actually went down significantly, like about 35, 40%. Because we remained open for business. And so as other organizations were laying people off, we made a full court press on recruiting across the country to bring more people into our fold. Our frontline staff have a very difficult job. They're taking care of people, they cook for them, they help them get to bed at night, they pass their medications. They are amazing people. And to get more amazing people to join us was really a challenge. But with COVID, we saw that as an opportunity to increase our roles essentially. And really in the past, we'd struggled through that. So it's been in some ways a silver lining for us, although other organizations have been hit harder. As we look to the future though, again, get back to the economics of it, our revenues aren't increasing through funding, so we have to figure out how do we maintain a level of quality of service and bring more people into the fold and serve people the best we can.
Yeah, here at Pathfinders, we made an early and a strong commitment to making sure we had the resources to sustain everyone's full employment. We have been able to avoid layoffs or hour reduction across our organization. And that's been particularly difficult as we've seen programs like our middle school have to suspend its services because MPS system did likewise. And so that's been a real challenge, but we have kept all of our staff fully employed and fully compensated. We're actually adding a number of new positions to have some targeted growth in some of our key essential services. We also decided early on that for those staff working with our young people in our core essential services, that we would offer them several months of hazard pay. And our goal now is to continue to secure the resources to sustain that additional compensation for as long as we are able to. But we thought that was really critical for staff who made the commitment, who continue to do the difficult face-to-face work under increasingly challenging and sometimes hazardous situations.
Similar
So
to,
go ahead, Linda.
Similar to Tim, we made the commitment, right from the beginning that we will continue and keep our staff. We've even added, we had an open position of Vice President of STEAM Education that we filled through this, which we felt was really, really important. We know that our kids need sharp programming now more than ever. Between the COVID-19 slide, the summer slide, the uncertainty of what exactly summer education opportunities look like, the need for our program and delivering it in a virtual way has never been greater.
And we were fortunate too to be able to keep everyone working. We tried to maximize the funding streams, and when and where we could, we were able to retrain and redeploy folks to those where we had the greatest financial strength.
We got a question from the audience about how, if and how you deliver services to clients with language or cultural barriers, and I might even add technological barriers that you noted earlier, Linda. Can you speak to that?
Sure. With us having a high percentage of Hispanic students, we've been trying to do as much as we can with translating our material into Spanish. We haven't been able to do that for our Sharp STEAM focus on weekly, but we are actually in the process of, with our program that we're going to be delivering virtually in the fall, of having both an English and a Spanish version.
So because we have multiple ways of people to access services, I mentioned before that people can call on the phone, and we have people that speak Spanish. We also have a translation service, so just about any other language people might speak, we can have a translator within about a minute or less helping them. But you can also text us, and you can chat with us, and you can search online. Those online resources, that database is convertible to other languages. So it's one of the routine ways that we've tried to make our services accessible to people as possible.
I also like this question that came in from an audience member, which was, what's the biggest eye-opening or paradigm-shifting experience you've had during this crisis as a leader?
I've been saying to people that I'm amazed at the way that the community has come together. Tim, we work regularly with you, and so we're organizations that are sort of embedded in the fabric of the community. But it's been heartwarming to see that people have just really come together and work together to say how can we help each other, how can we really serve our missions. It's been phenomenal. I think that if you're not in it, it might be invisible to you. But this is a community with a lot of needs, and there are a lot of really strong organizations doing a lot of really good work here every day. And it's been amazing to me that the way that just about every organization has stepped up. And I mentioned before, this is not easy. And Mike, you talked about the heroes, and there's no shortage of those people out there. And it chokes me up when I think about the way that the community has come together to help really people that are the most vulnerable. Certainly the folks you're working with, Mike, obviously, Tim, your kids, and we've serving a lot of people that socioeconomic are challenged. And so it's to me, that's been one of the real eye openers.
Yeah, I would echo your comments, John. That has always been a hallmark of the work that we do, that we do it better when we do it together. Collaboration has always been of highest value for us as an organization. And I think in moments of crisis and times of struggle and challenge like we're experiencing now, that becomes even more important to sustain those relationships and those partnerships and the work that we do together. And that's been across not just our nonprofit sector, but with United Way, for example, here in Milwaukee, the corporate community, and just volunteers stepping forward in ways that we never imagined we would need their support. As we shifted gears away from some of the on-site direct service work that our unpaid staff are doing, to ways that could still meet the needs of young people. But absolutely, we are seeing, I think, stronger collaboration and cooperation across the community, and that's really proven critical.
Yeah, for us, I remember this quote that Warren Buffett had about, you don't know who's got their swimsuit on until the tide goes out. And true leaders step up during times of challenge and crisis. And I've been so impressed by how nimble people have been in our organization to be able to pivot on things. Also innovate at the same time, just like I was talking about the virtual programming. We started with nothing and went to 0 to 60 in like literally days. Just the creativity that people have has just been amazing to me, and to their leadership. I mean, to be able to walk into a home or a facility and know that somebody may have that coronavirus, know that you could be impacted as well. When the civil unrest started up in Minneapolis with the George Floyd incident, we actually operate homes in that area. And one of our homes was in a very turbulent spot. And one of our staff members there, took all 4 of those people home with her to live in a different part of the Minneapolis area. We cleared it with the state and the county and through all the rules. But I was just so impressed with how people step up. And it's a testament to what the other 3 folks on this panel are doing as well with their organizations, the community at large. It's just an amazing time to come together and to help people. And that's one of the huge shiny points, I think, out of all this challenge is watching the amazing things that people are doing.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. Partnerships and collaboration is so important, more now than ever. And we have so many partners. I think that one of the reasons that Sharp is successful and making an impact on so many kids is really due to the partnerships that we have and how we've all continued to work together, pull together, and be more committed now than ever to helping out our kids.
Yeah, I just want to say Tim mentioned United Way, and United Way has been sensational with their partner organizations, including us, allowing us flexibility with their funding, but also being a backbone of coordination for services in the community. And Milwaukee County government has been phenomenal too in the way they've allowed us to be nimble and go to telehealth and be flexible with some of the resources and expand the definition of who we can help under certain funding streams. So it has been both people internally stepping up, it's been the partner organizations, and it's been those other funders, supporters, backbones, the Government United Way and the foundations that have really made it possible.
As the state's reopening, as you prepare to live in the new normal, as we all say, what are some of the precautions or measures that you're putting into place to ensure that your clients are safe, that your employees are brought back safely, or are you changing the way that or continuing to work differently with your employees as we move forward?
So we've discovered that we can do a lot of this work remotely and virtually, and I think we'll be forever changed. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have people working in the call center or seeing people in our office face to face. We've still got people out on the street working with homeless folks, but there's an efficiency there and effectiveness that I think is undeniable, and it's going to be a game changer for us.
Yeah, in terms of our work, we are actually, in terms of our emergency plan, we are doubling down as an effort to counteract some of the increased risks that I think we are beginning to experience in our community as the rest of our community begins its reopening process. We are deeply concerned about the measures that are being used to determine the relative risk, and in particular, the fact that we are under testing in our community. I think we're also learning that there are opportunities for some of our staff who have moved to a remote-based work to continue to do that and still do that effectively. And we are keeping in place those emergency protocols that limit the number of young people that are within the same space at any one time, and really trying to normalize some of those new ways of doing things, because I think it becomes even more important as more and more of communities in our country begin their reopening.
Yeah, so across 13 states, we have to monitor all these different activities going on. And as you know, every state's different right now. The COVID curves are different. The rules are different. The governor's policies are different. It's really a spaghetti mess trying to figure out what's going on, where, when, and how. And I know just in the state of Wisconsin, there's challenges too, but multiply that by another 12. And so as we're looking at this, we are starting to transition to starting to get people to visit, which is a big deal for us because we've been really, really careful about not having people come by. We just created a video yesterday that we're going to send out to all the families to show them the proper way to visit, which includes masks and the distancing and appointments. And our biggest concern is that we're going to see this thing jump again. So as we reopen, we may have to reclose again too. And we're just trying to keep on top of this to see what the future is going to look like.
Maybe as our last question, each of you could share, what's the one best decision that you think you've made during this crisis? What's one thing that really ended up working out well for your organization?
I think the best decision that I made is to keep the full staff. We know, again, now more than ever, how important it is that we 360 our program into something that's virtual. I think in addition to, keeping our staff, but believing in our staff. They've committed, more than ever now to make a difference. And I think keeping them on has been a huge motivation factor for them.
For me, I think it has been really important to message to our team that It is okay to not know what you need, and that it is understood that you will not always be at 100%. I mean, I think the amount of change and uncertainty and fear is hard to really take in. And our staff do an amazing job. They always have, and I know they always will. But they need space to also be afraid and to deal with the changes and the pressures that they're experiencing in their own lives. We certainly have many staff with children and with families. And as everything around them is changing and as more and more becomes uncertain, I think probably the best decision we have made is to continue to message the staff. It's okay to not be at 100%. And frankly, the reality is they're still at 100%, but they just need that space to be okay with not knowing an awful lot of what to expect on the road.
Tried to make those same assurances with our staff. I've tried to put out some written communication. I've tried some video communication, and knowing that first and foremost, we're trying to be safe and take care of them and make sure that we can keep everybody working. We just completed the second part of a two-part employee survey, and so we're just starting to look at the results of that. Not surprising. People are just as concerned about their own personal lives and their own personal well-being as they are about their work well-being. And so, as Tim said, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to ask for what you need, and not be worried about what the reaction or the response might be to that. So.
Yeah, my biggest leadership lesson here in the last few months has been you got to make firm decisions and stick to them. And it's always easier if you do it early and you communicate with people and you're transparent. And we had to make some tough calls early and people didn't want us to shut down. I mean, back in the first week of March, this was not quote unquote the right thing to do, but we did. And our stakeholders questioned us, but they understood now. And they may not like to hear when you have to make a hard call like that as a leader, but you got to do it. And by doing the communication through town halls, doing one-on-ones with people in our staff, a staff member just the other day said the one thing they appreciated most about what we've done throughout this entire crisis is that we were their true north for data and transparency. And I really appreciated that because we've really tried to provide the right information. There's so much politics on this stuff right now, and we really want to use data and transparency, how we communicate that to people to let them know why we're doing things. And we're going to continue to do that. So I really appreciate all the three leaders here too today. I want to say thanks to you guys because I've learned a ton just listening to you. I look forward to staying in touch with you afterwards too. But thanks to you too, Lauren, for what you've been doing to facilitate this.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That is all we have for time. So thank you all for sharing your insights and being with us this evening. This concludes the second of our three-part Candid Conversations in Nonprofit Leadership webinar series. Our third one is going to be on June 26th from 10 to 11. We're going to focus on preparing for the new normal. Today's webinar, like Dan mentioned, is going to be available on, a playback of it will be available on the page where you registered on biztimes.com. Also, when you close out of this window to this webinar, there's going to be a new tab that's going to open in your browser with a survey for this program. We'd really appreciate your feedback if you're able to take just a minute to give us some feedback on this webinar. Other than that, thanks again to our panelists for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the 26th. Thanks, and have a great week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.